Let's play a game. When you know the word, shout it out. You're looking a little bit good, hungry. Can I offer you a good banana? What a gorgeous day. There isn't a good cloud in the great sky. Did you get them all? It's Chris Westergaard, your teaching guru in Prague. Hey everybody, we're talking about lexis today, how to teach lexis to any level, to any student, regardless if you speak their language or not. So that's teaching without the use of translation. How do you do it? Let's find out. And of course, if you like this content, please hit that subscribe button. Gang, I'm in the middle of a very busy street on Vltava River. There are dozens of people walking across here. Everybody's kind of laughing and smirking. It's super embarrassing, but your like and your subscribe makes it all worthwhile. So do it, thanks. And if you're interested in joining me in Prague and the rest of the staff, do check out our TEFL certification course, The Language House. We run one of the best, if not the best, TEFL certification courses in the world. Each and every single month, we graduate new teachers who go off to teach in beautiful Prague and dozens of other countries around the world. Check us out. So let's hop on this tram and head over to the school. We're back at the Language House. It's a hot one out there. The question remains, how do you teach lexis to a student if you don't speak their language? And the answer is you elicit. What is eliciting? Why is it important? How do you do it? Eliciting is drawing out information from students. The basic principle is that I am trying to teach a concept. I know that in my students' language, they understand that same concept, and I'm using different techniques to pull that meaning out. Why is it important? Eliciting is one of the most important skills that any teacher can have, but especially a language teacher, it really is the cornerstone of any kind of solid teaching. Without eliciting, all you'd be doing is explaining and lecturing, and the problem with this is, number one, your entire lesson would be done via translation, and that means that you would only be able to teach a language if you spoke your student's language fluently. But more importantly, number two, if you just lecture, if you just explain, your students aren't involved in the learning process. They're just passively taking things in. Eliciting allows my students to participate and to get involved, which is what you want in any type of learning environment, whether it's a language class or not. 3, eliciting allows me to check what my students already know. Boom. 4, eliciting allows me to set the pace. If I'm lecturing, it's very common that I'm going to go faster than what my students can do or what they can manage or what they can handle. But because I don't move unless I get that participation, unless I get that feedback or that response from a student, the class moves at a pace where everybody's following. And because they are the ones that are pushing this pace, it means that I'm not going to be leaving a bunch of people behind. All of these together, eliciting is important to do whenever you teach. It doesn't matter what subject you're teaching, you should be doing it with all of your students all of the time. Right, so how do you elicit? How do you teach words to students without using translation? And there's 10 different techniques for this. I'm gonna try to do this off the top of my head. We have miming, pictures, drawing, realia, props, synonyms, antonyms, hyponyms, context, and definitions. Good. The goal here is to get the meaning of your words across as accurately and as efficiently as possible. It's not about playing a charades game or a Pictionary game where you can only use one type of technique. You should be using a mix of all of them, and you should really think like, what is the best elicit for the word that I'm teaching? If you hamstring yourself and you try to use elicits that won't work for different words, it's not gonna work at all because it should be quick, it should be fast. Different words are gonna work better with different eliciting techniques, but all words can be elicited. Let's take a look Number one is miming. Miming is using your body. This works great for action verbs, things that you can see and things that move, adjectives and adverbs, but really, really bad for abstract nouns. Imagine trying to mime integrity or chaos or anarchy. It would be really difficult to do. The trick to miming is that your body needs to depict the word correctly. If you botch the elicit, the word isn't going to make any sense, or if your students focus on the wrong part of the mime, they might confuse it with a different word. Many new teachers find it a little bit embarrassing to mime in class because they're not used to it, but it is an important and powerful tool because if a word comes up, you can mime it just like that. Pictures and drawings work well for concrete nouns, some adjectives and some verbs, but like miming, they're not really good for abstract concepts. Good luck trying to draw the word discipline to an intermediate student. If you're using pictures, try to get one picture to teach multiple different words. This will save you a lot of materials, and you don't want to run around your class or around a city with dozens and dozens of pictures for your classes. Try to get as many words as you can with one image. That will save you a lot of time and resources. Drawing is a great skill to hone and to become good at because it's immediate. When you're in class teaching and a new concept comes up, it's really easy if you can put a quick drawing up. For the people who can't draw out there, don't worry, your drawings don't have to be perfect. They just have to get that meaning across. Let's take a look at some of these bad drawings. You can still tell what the word is, and that's gonna save you a lot of time from having to Google image this, print it out, and do all of the hassle that comes with getting pictures for your classes. Realia is the real thing. This is a chair, right? It's the actual thing. Realia is really engaging, but more than that, it's basically foolproof. I mean, if your students think that this is a palm tree that goes above your board as far as the teacher goes. The limitations here are that you can't really bring in everything. You can't bring in a helicopter, you can't bring in a skyscraper, but if you can bring in some objects, do it. So maybe you're teaching a lesson on fruits, bring in a bunch of these fruits. Students will find it engaging and it will make your teaching a lot easier too. Props are great if you don't have the real thing, and the best thing about using a prop is you can put anything in your hand, combine it with a mime, and it focuses on the noun. So case in point, what part is this? What part is this? It's the good bow. What is it now? It's the arrow, correct. You could do it with anything. Put something in your hand, act it out, people will focus on the object. Synonyms and antonyms work well if words have a similar or opposite meaning. So not great, another word for great begins with an A, another word for great, good, amazing, or you're tired, but you're very tired. Another word for very tired is good, exhausted. Synonyms work well, but there's a few things to remember about them. One, if you're teaching lower levels, it's going to be really difficult to use synonyms because your students just don't have the word pool. And number two, if you remember from our first video on teaching vocab, words have a lot of different meanings and you can't really just say that this word equals this word. Case in point, take for example the word creep compared to the word tiptoe. Tiptoe, the connotation of tiptoe, it's more childlike, but with creep, it has more of that sinister meaning. Bloodthirsty, competitive is another one. There's a big difference between being pissed off and being livid. You can't just say that these words are the same. However, using synonyms is a great way to open that door to other elicits where you can bring some of those nuances across. Antonym use is surprisingly an effective way of eliciting that is oftentimes overlooked. Sometimes by getting students to think of the opposite thing, it's a lot easier to pull out that word. So not bad, but good. Not short, but tall. Not married, but divorced, good. Not the worst, no, but the best, great. Hyponyms, I bet you've never heard of that one. Hyponyms are the subordinate of a lexis category. An easier way of saying this is basically a hyponym is an example. So if I'm teaching the word cutlery, I can say spoon, fork, knife, or I can show them, again, some realia of what cutlery is. If I'm teaching The word season, you guessed it, I could say winter, spring, fall, and students would then begin to realize that I was talking about the overreaching category, which would be seasons. If it was tool, it would be hammer, screwdriver, etc., etc. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking a lot of these words are pretty basic though, whether it is a drawing of something or bringing in the real thing like a chair or even cutlery or season. They're not difficult words, they're not abstract words. And so you might be thinking there's no way to elicit those specific words, and you would be wrong though. All words can get elicited, you just have to find the right technique to use. So for abstract concepts, it's best to use either context or definition. Context is a great tool for all of your complicated language. Words that you can't really draw or mime or show pictures of or use synonyms for, use context. And what you do here is you use language to create the scenario where the word would naturally come up. By focusing on that specific word, it's an easy way to pull that meaning across. So, for example, I need to decide which one. Part of me wants to do this, but also another part of me wants to do this, and I can't make up my mind. I'm so confused. Do I pick this one or do I pick this one? I'm feeling really what? I'm feeling really indecisive. Or I have to build this piece of furniture from IKEA, but there's so many different pieces. It's difficult. I don't know where to start. I have to put all of these things together. It's very, very complex. So exactly. So generally what I'm doing is I am using language to create that scenario where the students understand what the scenario is that I'm talking about, and then I focus on the word that they should be using. And by doing that, it really gets that meaning across. Aside from using context, you also have the ability to give the definition of the word itself. You can say, what word is this? You give the definition, and the goal is for students to tell you what the word is. And I know what you're thinking, and I know what you're gonna ask. If you can use context and you can use the definition of the word, why not just use those? Why do miming? Why do drawing? Why do synonyms and antonyms and hyponyms and all of this other stuff that we already learned? And the reason is that for many of your students, giving explanations or giving definitions is going to be way too much TTT. They're not going to be able to follow along, and when most teachers start teaching, their TTT tends to be extremely high. Most of us are not used to giving definitions of words. We're not used to putting the words in context. And when we try without practice, we tend to speak way too much. So that's the main reason why you shouldn't use context and definitions all of the time. Case in point, try to give the definition of a peach. It's pretty difficult to do. I mean, you can say, well, it's a fruit, it's about this size, it's kind of like orange and reddish, and it's like fuzzy, and it has a pit in it. I mean, that language is gonna go way over your student's head. They're not gonna be able to follow it. Wouldn't it be much better to just have a picture of a peach? Like, wouldn't that be a faster way of getting that context across? But wait, if your students don't know the word in English, how is it possible to elicit that actual word? I mean, they don't know the word. How are you gonna get them to say the word? That's a great question, and the answer is you can't. If your students don't know the actual word, no amount of eliciting is going to pull that word from them immediately. If that's the case, you then start to trail the word out. So case in point, if I'm teaching the word stapler and I'm using realia to teach this, I can pretty much assume, based on my good use of an elicit, that the students understand the concept. Like, they don't think it's a banana. They know in their own language what a stapler is. Now I need to begin to try to trail this word out. And what I'll do is, on the board, I will begin to slowly write the letters of the word down, and I will try to get them to fill in the gaps. Even if it's only the last letter, they're still participating in the vocabulary process. So that's gonna look something like this. in this example, I still ended up giving the students the word, but I elicited the concept from them. I didn't just get up and explain what a stapler was. I got it so they knew what I was talking about. And I eventually had to give them the word, but I'm still eliciting through this entire process. You'll find when you actually start trailing some of these words out, that half of your students, it will jog their memory, it will spark their memory, and they'll be able to complete it for you. As I elicit an individual word, I'm going to write it correctly on the board. Remember, writing it on the board means in the correct part of speech, and obviously visible and clear and spelled correctly and all that other stuff. Once the word is on the board, I'm going to correlate/drill it with the class a few times. And I'm going to do this for pronunciational purposes. So for example, going back to my word stapler, I'm going to write a stapler on the board, and then we're going to correlate as a class. Drilling it looks a little bit like this. I'll have it up on the board and I'll say a stapler. The students will say stapler, a stapler, a stapler, a stapler. I'll do this a few times to work on pronunciation. I'll say it correctly and then the students will repeat it back. It seems kind of silly and kind of childish and kind of like monotonous, but it is a good way to work on pronunciation. So much so that if I have a large group of students, I'll probably put them into groups and drill them one at a time, just so I can hear any potential mistakes and then correct them. As a quick recap, I have elicited a word using one, if not multiple, of the techniques given. I have trailed the word out if the students didn't actually know the word, and I've written it on the board in its correct part of speech. I've then drilled the word multiple times to really push correct pronunciation, but I am not done now. For every word that I elicit, I then have to concept check. I have to make sure that students have understood whatever the word is by asking specific questions. And I've got a whole video on concept check questioning. I'm not gonna go over it. It's a 6 or 7 minute video. You can click it probably right here, I think, right around there if you wanna watch it. But you're going to wanna concept check each and every single word after you elicit it. When you have your word list of what you're gonna be teaching your class, look at it and take a minute to think of what words are going to work well with different elicits. Don't just try to mime out abstract concepts. Try not to draw very complicated words. You should be able to look at your word list and think like, what's the best elicit or combinations of elicits to get this meaning across? So for example, I find that miming in context works great because I can give them a little bit of language, but I'm also acting out the word itself. So it really helps with a lot of that nuance that might not come through with just the mime itself. Gang, eliciting is a skill. It's a skill that takes time to get good at. A lot of times, new teachers will think it's ineffective or they'll say it doesn't really work well. And that's usually because you haven't given yourself enough time to practice it. Drawing takes a bit of practice, miming takes a bit of practice, asking the right questions, doing the right things to pull that specific meaning across. But it is a useful skill for your students because it really makes them participate and be active in the learning process. And it's also a good skill for you, teacher, to learn because it means that if you have good eliciting, you can teach anywhere in the world. You can teach any student of any language without having to speak the student's language. So practice this and get good at it. Oh, the Facebook group. I almost forgot. We have a fantastic Facebook group called Pack Your Bags and Move to Prague. It is for all of the new students of the Language House TEFL. It's filled with the staff, with past graduates, with new students, with other people related to the course. And we try to post daily regarding like the best cafes and the best places to get a slice of pizza. So if you are interested in teaching in Prague and joining our course, I'm gonna put that link below and you can just click it and join. Of course, as always, thanks so much for watching. It's like 95 degrees in the city today. I can't believe I'm doing a video. But your participation, as always, means so much. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. In a couple weeks, I'll probably have video number 3 on how to create dynamic and interesting studies so we can practice and learn all of this great vocabulary that we've elicited. Have a great day. Take care.